Government is not reason. Government is not eloquence. Government is force. And like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. My name is Daniel Hapney. This is The Real Story. This is a show that goes over stuff that no one else in media will go over. And I hope you take the time to listen and watch and invite others to watch and maybe even do your own due diligence. Okay? Discover, go out there and investigate and find out if what I bring to you, okay, has truth to it, and if that truth has importance, and if that importance, okay, is important for you to take action about. So, what do we have for you this evening? I have something that will blow your socks off. This is big. The major media will never tell you. Okay, but what I have for you is I have a physics professor by the name of Stephen Jones. This is at the Architects and Engineers Symposium in Boston. This was held at Faneuil Hall on December 15th. And why that's important is because these guys were looking at 9/11 truth, and they decided, this is architects and engineers, decided that it's impossible for the story we were told and sold to be true. And why is it impossible? Because it goes against science. Wow. You mean that controlled media lied to me again? The ones who told me about the weapons of mass destruction? The ones that told me that they were, we need to start a war with someone who didn't, do anything to us? I could go into how many times they've lied to you. I mean, they lied to you about torture, didn't they? Boy, I'm glad it wasn't your family they were torturing. They lied to you about wiretapping. I'm glad it wasn't your family they were listening to. Maybe it was. They lied to you about, why we need a Patriot Act. Boy, how about the anthrax, folks? You may all forget all this stuff, but right after 9/11, gee, there's this anthrax scare, and it turns out to be anthrax from our labs, weapons-grade anthrax, but that's all another story. What I have for you today is the smoking gun evidence. That's right, you heard me. I have it for you, the smoking gun evidence. You get to listen to Stephen Jones, okay? And Mr. Jones, once again a professor, who has been doing, what, fusion research for the United States federal government for years, okay, is going to go over, okay, what he's found using a, let's see, electron depositing microscope, okay? And why that's important is because just like CSI and the, what do they call, crime scene investigations and forensic files and all those shows you're probably used to watching on what I consider the manipulated media channels, that's right, there's trace elements and there's remnants left from all crime scenes. You're familiar with that? Well, you should scratch your head, and when it came to 9/11, who cleaned up the mess? Why couldn't we use it or at least go through it like it was a forensic crime scene? And when people did and they found out stuff that didn't jive with the story we were told, what were we told then? So anyway, you get to listen to a gentleman who actually goes through it scientifically piece by piece and shows you that, my gosh, it wasn't just the planes that damaged those buildings. And you can listen to other, once again, witnesses, people who were there. Maybe we'll bring those in for you, okay? But right now what we have is Stephen Jones at the Architects and Engineers Symposium in Boston at Faneuil Hall. This is shocking when you think of the ramifications. So put your seatbelt on. You're watching The Real Story.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Stephen Jones.
With the Idaho National Engineering Lab, now the Idaho National Lab. I came out here a time or two with regard to my fusion research, and it's just a delight to be back. As the title says, I will discuss another discovery. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but there aren't many people in this room. I think there are 4 of us, counting myself, that know about this, and I want to announce this discovery today. It is important in this research that we're engaged in. I want to remind you, with the scientific method, we gather all the facts that we can. We do experiments. We use microscopes, as you see there. And Then we draw a conclusion. What's called the political method starts with a conclusion, and then you find facts that support that and you ignore other facts. That's not the game we're into. We are looking to get at the truth, and so we want to gather all the facts that we can. I appreciated Richard Gage's remarks earlier today. Excellent talk. He's a very fine speaker, and I really appreciate what he's done in pulling all these data together. I want to emphasize a couple of things. There is a distinction between a partial collapse and a complete collapse. I get this from those who support the official theory. That is, they say, well, there are buildings that have collapsed with fire, but not complete collapse. These are all partial collapses. And if there are any examples of a complete collapse of a building due to fire, I'd like to know about it. I've looked high and low. On the left here, you see an inferno that engulfed this building in Madrid, Spain, and the structure stood. After about 24 hours of this conflagration, the building, that is the frame of it, still stood. There was a piece of it that sloughed off up here. That's what you expect. I mean, that can happen. A piece of the building falling off. We could call that a partial collapse. Similarly, in the Boston Globe, just about a week ago, I wrote a letter to the editor. I don't think my letter was published, unfortunately, but there was an experiment done with a model building, 1/8 scale, and they knocked out one of the support columns to see what would happen and to take measurements. See, a very good idea, an experiment, I like that. Well, what do you think happened? Partial collapse. That is, it did not completely collapse. In the article, they emphasized the building held the structure. Now, on the other hand, with the towers and World Trade Center 7, we have a complete collapse. The structure, the support structure, particularly the core columns, are decimated. Concrete has been pulverized to a considerable extent. And of course, in the case of the towers, as Richard said, the beams were thrown horizontally large distances. Now, how do the official theorists, I like to point out this is an official conspiracy theory. After all, the 19 hijackers did not work individually and alone. They worked together. That's a conspiracy. So the official story is, how did the towers come down? Besant and Verdure published a paper in which they said this upper block, so referring in particular, well, both towers, the upper block remains, they call it a rigid body, an intact upper block of floor that acts as a tamper, also referred to as a pile driver. As I saw that, you see the arrow pushing down, knocking the rest of the building down. And then when you get to the ground level, suddenly then this upper block is finally destroyed. Now, as soon as I saw their argument, it occurred to me how hard it is sometimes to persuade engineering students that I've taught for over 21 years, that the third law works all the time. And that means that if there's a force down, the upper block pushing down on the building, then there's an equal and opposite force up, pushing up on that block. Whether it's accelerating, constant speed, stationary, doesn't matter. Newton's third law holds in all cases. There are equal and opposite forces. And we learn that, but to convince some people that is tricky. But it is true. There is an equal force up. They need to have an arrow here pointing up. Now, furthermore, the upper columns, as you go up, the support columns, the core columns get smaller. That is, the steel is thinning out as you go up. So, if anything, the upper columns will be affected more than the lower columns. You don't expect that upper block to remain as a rigid block. Their whole explanation misses this. And NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, only takes this collapse of the towers to the point of initiation. They use the term poised for collapse. That's as far as they go. So they don't look beyond this. Byzantine all do, but they then rely on this argument, which, let's see how it looks now. We've slowed this down for you so you can see the upper block. Is it remaining intact, or does Newton's third law hold? The pushing up is causing some destruction of that so-called rigid or intact body. It doesn't stay rigid at all.